Very good morning, children. So we are here to look into the next lesson, Women, Caste and Reform. This is for grade 8, Social Science, lesson number 8, and the name of the lesson is Women, Caste and Reform. So to give you an introduction, it deals with the changes or transitions that happen in the lives of women. So, as you know that in the early days, women were not allowed to, or girls were not allowed to go to school, or they were not given equal rights as those of boys. And child marriage and sati, all these issues were constantly there as a problem for women in the olden days. So, you can see a beautiful transition that is caused by the reformers, or I could rather say that people who objected, or people who denied that, or people who completely were against all these practices, and how they supported women in all forms, and how women started to come up in education as well as in literary work, how they established themselves in literary work, and then how they even joined politics is clearly stated in the first part of the lesson. So 200 years ago, the things were very different, and you can see that many children, girl children, were married off at a very early age. So it happened in both religions, both Hindus and Muslims, and you can see that polygamy, the practice of polygamy, that means marrying more than one wife, was a very common was a very common thing that happened in almost all parts of India. And if a woman, if she loses her husband, the widow was forced to perform a religious rite called as a sati, in which she is directly sent to the funeral pyre and she was burnt with her husband. So the differences between men and women were not only the ones in the society, but even the caste system that prevailed. The you can see that the previous in olden days, you can see the caste system that was divided as Brahmans, and the Kshatriyas. And you can say they call themselves as upper caste, and they were people who were doing all the coolie work, and the laborers were also treated like untouchables, or Harijans. They were treated like untouchables in those societies. So all these led to certain thought-provoking reforms that happened during the 19th and the 20th century, and slowly all these perceptions changed. So let us see how it all happened. So the first one I would like to introduce is that this particular person is Raja Ram Mohan Roy. This is the picture of Raja Ram Mohan Roy. So usually how all these reforms take place, or how does it happen? How was it motivated into a society? How was it instilled, or how was it started, and how it started in a society? That is the question. So from the early 19th century, we can see that many debates and discussions and so about social customs and practices were going on, and it's very common to find that people were coming up with new reasons and coming up with new issues, and it was almost discussed everywhere. And one important reason for this new development of communication was people started reading books, newspapers, magazines, leaflets, and pamphlets. So all this written form of communication also helped the message to spread very far. And these were almost quite cheaper, and it was accessible than the manuscripts, and hence ordinary people also would have access to all these forms of communications. And their main idea was to express and talk about the issues regarding social, political, and economic, or religious, and it was debated and discussed by men as well as women in some cities. So we could see that this type of a debate and a discussion slowly led to a change in the people's mind, and they started to think about the Reformation. So that was where this Mr. Raja Ram Mohan Roy comes into the scene. So these debates were often initiated by Indian reformers and reform groups. So one such reformer who initiated this debate is Rajaram Mohan Roy, and it happened in 1772 to 1833. So he also founded a reform association known as the Brahmo Sabha, or as later it was known as the Brahmo Samaj. This is a short video about Rajaram Mohan Roy.
हेलो स्टूडेंट्स, इस प्रेजेंटेशन में हम हिस्ट्री क्लास 8 का चैप्टर 8 डिस्कस करेंगे, विमेन कास्ट.
So they have actually discussed about the issues as well as the evils that were dealt by Rajaram Mohan Roy. Now we go on to what are the things he actually abolished from the society. So the first one is he was against sati. So he was very much against this old practice. And you could see very clearly that all these debates, discussions were about social, religious, and political issues. And the new forms of communications like magazines, leaflets, and pamphlets led to the freedom of expression of people, where they could express their views about certain practices that were going on. So these discussions started spreading to the wider public, and therefore it led to the movements for social change, and this was initiated much by the Indian reformers. And the first person is Rajaram Mohan Roy. As I already told you, he was the person who founded Brahmo Samaj in Calcutta. Previously it was known as Brahmo Sabha. Now later it became to be known as Brahmo Samaj. Now people like Rajaram Mohan Roy are described as reformers because they felt that changes must happen in a society, and unjust practices must be just dealt away with. And they had done the best to ensure that these changes will happen, and they started to literally persuade people to give up their old practices and adopt a new way of life. And he was very much interested in spreading of the knowledge that is found in Western education in the country, and because he believed that education can empower women and it can also provide a freedom to a greater level. And he wrote about the way women were forced to bear the burden of domestic work, and how they were confined to the home and the kitchen, and they were not at all allowed to come out, and they were denied the rights to go to a school. So he believed very strongly that they must change the life of a girl or girl child or a widow. And he was particularly moved by the problems that were faced by the widows in their lives. So he literally started a campaign against the practice of sati. So a campaign is nothing but like a movement. So we go on to the next slide. And if you look into the life history of Rajaram Mohan Roy, it's quite interesting because he is a well-versed scholar in Sanskrit, Persian, and European languages. And obviously, he fought against sati. And his strategy. So, what was the strategy he adopted to fight against sati? Because these people in the society were very much into the old orthodox traditions. So he wanted the people to come out of it. So he tried to quote verses from the ancient sacred texts that would make people believe that this is not there in the in the Vedas. So this practice was not there in the Vedas, and hence it need not be practiced. So by successful campaigning of this particular strategy, in 1829 sati was completely banned, and he proved that the practice of sati was not sanctioned in any ancient text, and therefore he believed very strongly that changes need to happen in a society. And since the British were also interested in bringing about certain reforms into the Indian society, they supported the concepts of Rajaram Mohan Roy, and hence with this particular background, in 1829 they were completely able to abolish sati. Now the strategy that was used by Rajaram Mohan Roy was used by the leaders, by the later reformers, I would say, and they were successful in following it and proving it to the people that all these practices can be banned. We move on to the next slide. This is Aishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. So he is one of the very famous reformers, and he actually also used the ancient text to suggest that widows could remarry, and his suggestion was adopted by the British officials, and therefore, with the help of his suggestion, a law was successfully passed in 1856 which permitted widow remarriage, and but there is always a group, a conservative group that is always against them, and hence there was always an opposition, and even they even boycotted him. So by So by the second half of the, you can see that by the second half of the 19th century, the movement that was there in favor of widow remarriage, it spread to almost other areas of the country, and even in the Telugu-speaking areas of the Madras Presidency, you can see a person called Veerasalingam Pantulu. He actually formed an association for widow remarriage, and in the same way, people were also working, like reformers and young intellectuals. They were also working in Bombay, and they pledged themselves to work for the same cause. So the next person to come in line, the next reformer to come in line is Swami Dayananda Saraswati. So he founded the Arya Samaj in the year 1857, and he also supported the concept of widow remarriage, and yet the number of widows who actually remarried remain very low, and those who married were not easily accepted into the society, and even the conservative groups continue to oppose the law. So you can see very well that these three reformers were fighting for the rights of women and for the girl child, and they were even supporting widow remarriage. So let's see about the concept of girls and their gaining and their admission into schools and universities. So slowly the concept of education for girls was also being discussed in the society, and many of the reformers felt that education for girls is very necessary, is an important factor to improve the condition of women. So one particular person, I would say Vidyasagar, he was in Calcutta, and many other reformers in Bombay, they set up schools for girls. But people had a lot of fears in their mind, because the main thought that the girls will be away from their domestic duties, and they will have to travel to public places where they will be exposed to corruption, or people even thought that the public might have a bad influence on the girls. So many of the liberal fathers who were quite broad enough, they themselves taught their girl children, and hence many of them were taught at home rather than being sent to school. But still, we could see that the reformer Rash Sundari Devi, she was a self-taught woman. She is a very good example, because she secretly learned to read and light in the flickering night candles, light of the candles at night. And in the latter part of the century, you could see that the schools were being established by the Arya Samaj in Punjab and by Jyoti Rao Phule in Maharashtra. So there is a very interesting thing about Jyoti Rao. He is actually an Indian social activist, and he worked very much for the eradication of untouchability. So he believed that there is no need for a caste division, and the people who belong to a lower caste were treated very badly. Hence, he wanted to eradicate that from the society, and he was against this caste system. And if you see that women slowly started to read and teach at home. And one particular example is, I would say, that in Muslim households in North India, women started to read the Quran in Arabic. So they were taught by women who came to teach at home, and some reformers like Mumtaz Ali. This is she is a very interesting reformer. She used to reinterpret verses from the Quran to argue about women's education. So the first Urdu novels began to be written at the end of the late 19th century, and amongst other things, they were meant to encourage women to read about religion and domestic management in a language. So all this started to slowly encourage women to come into the field of education. Now we go on to the next slide. So the next concept is how women started to write about women. So it was initially the men who fought for the women. Now the scenario slowly changed, and by the early 20th century, many Muslim women like the Begums of Bhopal, they played a very important role in promoting education for women. So it was like they founded a primary school for girls at Aligarh, and another remarkable person, Begum Rokeya Sakawat Hossain, she also started schools for Muslim girls in Patna and Calcutta. So if you see that these two women were a fearless critic of conservative ideas, I would say that they were very strong enough to call a spade, and they were able to criticize the people who had all these false conservative ideas about women, and they argued that the religious leaders of every faith were also had an important part to bring in upbringing the women in the society. So in 1880, you can see that women started to slowly enter the universities, and some of them were trained to be doctors, some of them were trained to be teachers, and so many women began to write and publish their views on the place of women in society. So one particular example you can see is about Tarabai Shinde. So we move on to the next slide. So Tarabai Shinde, a wonderful reformer, she was educated in Pune and she published a book. The name of the book is Stri Purush Tulna, and it is actually, the meaning of the book is a book on comparison between men and women. So it talks about the social differences between the men and women in the society. And next particular reformer, an Indian reformer, obviously a woman, Pandita Ramabai, and she's a great scholar of Sanskrit, and she felt that Hinduism suppressed this religion suppressed women a lot, and she also wrote a book which talks about the miserable lives of the upper caste Hindu women, and who were very badly treated by the relatives at home after the loss of the husband. And here women were trained. Now what she did was, like, she found a widow's home in Pune to give shelter to widows, and they were trained so that they could support themselves economically. So women and politics. So finally, if we say that after the successful recognition of women and their admission into universities, now they also entered into the next phase of life, like they were also canvassing in politics. And by the end of the 20th century, we could see that they formed a political pressure group to form laws for women to vote. So this particular era was very important because that was a time where the law for women to vote actually came into existence. So, and they also fought for better healthcare and education for women. And for example, many Hindu nationalists, they felt that Hindu women were adopting Western ways, and it would corrupt their Hindu culture and erode the family values. And Orthodox Muslims were also worried about the impact, and these were the opposition groups, and they were also the conservative groups who always challenged the women who wanted to have a better place in the society. Now, by the end of the 19th century, we could see that women were actively engaged in the Reformation, and they even wrote books, edited magazines, they founded schools and training centers, and even set up women associations. And we could see that from the early 20th century, they had actually formed various groups to fight for their right to vote, and in this all these led to the various nationalist and socialist movements, and we could see that many women joined these movements. And by the 20th century, even the leaders at that time, Jawaharlal Nehru, Mr. Subhash Chandra Bose and Mr. Jawaharlal Nehru, they also started to lend their support to women's equality and freedom. And they also promised that there would be a promise of, or they would ensure that women also had the right to vote, and hence but still it was in the pre-independence era. The women were actually asked to concentrate more on the anti-British struggles. So with this we come to the end of first part of the lesson, which talks about the position of women in the olden days and how Reformation slowly led to the change in the life of women, and how education and how women excelled in education, literature, and even they entered the universities, and how they also fought for their right to vote. Hence, this part of the lesson talks about the women and their position or place in the society, and how they fought to upgrade themselves in the society. So thank you, children. This is the end of part 1 in lesson 8.